Throw a slack, you fucking moron!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Screenshare, a movie podcast about living life a quarter mile at a time. My name's Calder.
And I'm Adam.
And this is our episode starting our series, Fast and Furious versus let me let me get some oil on these lips.
Let me dump a whole can of oil in your mouth, and because of the scene in the movie. There you go. That was good reference.
This is the first episode of our Fast and Furious versus Star Wars series, which is going to be a thing that happens throughout the year, where I, a fan of the Fast and Furious, have Adam watch those movies, and he, a fan of Star Wars, has me watch the Star Wars movies. And then we kind of figure out, I don't know if it's necessarily a competition, because I know which one's better.
Can I be honest? I'm kind of seeing it more as like, we just really love these series, so we're just like sharing them.
I mean, there's a list, but like,
there is a list,
and I know which ones
and we
are
will
better.
compare at the end.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to be thinking about that when I'm talking about them or when I'm ranking them.
It's not going to be a strategic thing, but all I know is the cream's going to rise to the top.
Don't know what that means. I do want to say this off the top of like the whole series. I'm going into this with a fully open mind, and like I've seen I think three of the Fast and Furious movies before this. I'd seen
Fast 5. We've done Fast 5 on the podcast.
Yeah, I'd seen Fast 5. I think I saw part of Fast 6, but not the whole thing. But like, and I saw the first two, which we'll be talking about this month.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, I'm going in with an open mind. I like goof on Fast and Furious because I don't know much about it, and it's fun to make fun of something you like, because that's how we bond. He's dying. It's okay.
That's how we bond.
That's how we bond, is making fun of each other's things. I'm
not
also
those things, you perverts.
I'm also going into Star Wars with an open mind. I'm trying to go into it like I don't know too much about it already.
Which is hard.
It's hard, but
admittedly,
I'm like,
Star Wars is uniquely hard to do this with.
Yeah.
Because it's like the biggest franchise, I think.
And they're all connected.
Yeah.
So it's like, it is very difficult, but like, I was able to do it a little bit just to like, once in a while be like, insane that this is like, that this was a new thing that they did. But I'm doing the same with Fast and Furious, where I'm like not going in being like, this is a stupid car movie. You know, I'm trying to glean more from it. And as much as you joke, I hope that you're kind of doing the same.
I am trying. I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
But it is hard because I think start with Star Wars also, since we're starting with A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi, it is like the middle of the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, we're going not chronologically. We're going release order with both series.
Yeah. And with the way that they've done some things to the Star Wars ones, which we'll talk about later, it is hard to forget that it is attached to those ones.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that later. Today we're talking about The Fast and the Furious, the 2001 box office smash hit starring Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster, and some other people. This movie is near and dear to my heart, because I don't really know. I think it strikes a good balance between the silly and melodramatic and the like action stuff and like set pieces that I like and kind of keep me pumping through some movies.
Do you want to give a really brief synopsis of what the film's about?
No. So the movie, well, here's the thing about this movie is if you've seen Point Break, you've also seen this movie.
Okay. I haven't seen Point Break, so I've seen this movie.
So this movie basically ripped off Point Break, starring Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, where one of them is Paul Walker is trying to join a street racing gang that may or may not be stealing VCR players and DVD players. Little do we know that he's actually a cop. Now, Vin Diesel is the head of this gang. He does not like the cops. He's been to jail because he beat some guy's face in.
With a wrench.
And we'll see that later on.
Oh, good to
I
know.
think you saw part of F9 actually, not F.
I think you showed me a clip.
Yeah.
Because you were like, you gotta see
F9
this.
is glorious. So it's really about like the street racing subculture in LA, and sort of like how it works in a way. It's the movie is sort of based on this article from Vibe magazine called Racer X by Ken Lee. But it changed a lot in its production, and we'll talk about that. But it's about this cop who is trying to figure out who's stealing these VCR players. He gets pulled into this street racing gang, basically. And there's a sort of rival gang led by Johnny Tran.
Yeah, what are they called? They're called the...
I honestly couldn't tell you.
Oh, there was one thing...
I think they say their name, but
it's something like the Vipers or something.
It's something
but I forget.
kind of stupid. But Johnny Tran is the leader. And little does Paul Walker know that he is not just trying to solve a crime, but he's finding his family throughout this process.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the movie's about street racing, but like a bit more like deeply, it's like about kind of like finding purpose and like finding a place and like sacrificing and like figuring out your priorities. Like Paul Walker at the beginning is very much just like trying to bust these guys.
Yeah.
But then like there's conflict as he like figures out what he values and who he values by getting to know these people and like finding out what they value and that they're more than just like a couple crooks, you know?
They're not just enemies to like sort of mess with and try to get what you need out of them. They're people. And
They're
Vin Diesel
complex
is a
humans, yeah.
gentle young man.
Well, at times, but also not at times. But yeah, and then it ultimately culminates in the end where he's got to make the ultimate decision to like of what he really values. Like, does he value his job and what his life has always been, or does he value the relationships he's built?
Much like Johnny Utah in Point Break, where he lets Patrick Swayze ride that big wave one last time, and does Patrick Swayze die? I don't know. It's open-ended. Instead of bringing him in, he lets him ride the wave.
Kind of like Surf's Up.
Honestly, a little bit.
Nice.
Surf's Up is kind of... Actually, yeah, it's kind of Fast and Furious pill.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd say that. But.
So this movie was supposed to kind of... Like, it wasn't meant to be a franchise.
You could kind of tell. Like, this feels like a very, like...
It's very contained. Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. I was going to go tight.
Yeah.
But that's contained.
That's
is
the
right
universal symbol for contained. The movie cost $38 million in 2001. Made 207, which is a big surprise. Like, it was supposed to just kind of be these, like... one of these like lower level, maybe straight to video. Like Vin Diesel wasn't a star. None of these people were stars. And this is a trend we'll kind of track over the series. But the 207 million it made was 60% domestic and 40% international. And that starts to shift drastically and influences where they take the franchise later on.
Yeah.
But the film's directed by Rob Cohen, who's kind of a certified bad guy.
Cool.
In terms of everything. And he's
Nice.
also kind of a bad director. Like, there are times in this where you're just kind of like, there's so much like happening, but it doesn't feel like it's being captured. Or
yeah.
like,
I mean, at the beginning, I've seen this film, I think 3 times now. And at the
Almost
beginning,
more than Star Wars?
no.
Okay.
Maybe more than like, probably the same amount of times as Solo at this point. But anyway, we'll get to that. I think you've seen that movie 1/2 time.
What?
Solo.
I watched it in theaters.
Yeah, but you fell asleep. Or no, you fell asleep during Rogue One.
Yeah. And then I watched Rogue One actually a couple weeks ago.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then you'll watch it again when we do the movie in
Yeah,
a
in
few
like
months.
6 months.
Yeah, but yeah, with this movie, I've seen it 3 times. At the beginning, you mentioned that the whole thing is that they're stealing VCRs. I didn't realize that was the main thing. I thought they were stealing money off of these trucks. because I just assumed that.
Well,
in fact, in the movie when it's like, yeah, I found the VCR players, I'm like, what are they just trying to like get them for petty theft also? Like, I didn't realize that was like the crime.
well, because that was such a like that cost so much more than it does now.
Yeah.
Especially if they were like, I think some of them were like little TV combo VCRs, which were much more expensive than you'd come to think. But it is like, compared to where the series goes later on, it's a pretty low rent crime.
Yeah.
Like pretty soon they're smuggling drugs and stuff, but like,
Which is kind of crazy, like how big of a police operation it is. Like, it's hard to like connect to the time, because I guess what would the equivalent be now if they were stealing like PS5s?
I guess probably PS5s.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking like phones, but phones are so much like on a transport truck, you could probably stack like 100,000 phones if you like pack them tight, right? So probably PlayStation 5s and like Xboxes and stuff.
But even that, I'm like, that doesn't seem like a crime worthy of like this level of like they've got a safe house, which is like this crazy mansion.
You've got like harpoons.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
is it super logical? No.
But here's the thing. I don't really think about it, because that's not really what I'm focusing on.
It's not about what they're stealing.
It's about the stunts. It's about the characters. It's about the relationships.
I think Point Break, they're bank robbers, which is a little more like
big.
That's like makes sense. That'll make sense at any time. Being transport truck VCR thieves is not really translatable to today. Not
like, is there a point where the police are like, they're stealing VCRs? Or are they just like, they're robbing trucks and the truck drivers are getting angry?
It's more that they're robbing trucks, I think.
Okay.
Because that's...
Or isn't it more that like, they're like, we can't contain these truck drivers anymore, they're going to start shooting people?
It's a bit... It's like... It's the act.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they're doing the thing rather than what they're stealing.
And it keeps happening.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, so they're doing trucks now, but what do they do later, right?
Vans. Planes. Trains.
I think planes and trains is better. Vans was kind of a step down.
Yeah. I don't know. I think vans are...
But yeah, Rob Cohen's like
pretty
bad guy and like really not the best director.
Yeah.
Like it's serviceable for this movie, but these movies get much better directed, and we'll see that in Tokyo Drift when Justin Lin takes over.
I mean, with this movie specifically, it's something where like I think about it and I'm like, there's something really special about this movie. There's like a lot of things that I really like, but there just feels to be something that is holding it back from being like really good.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like a lot of the time, if you have that with a movie, but you can't really find the reason, it's probably just that it wasn't like pieced together great.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of great aspects, but as a whole, it's like a little bit muddy. So yeah, it's probably a directing thing, maybe an editing thing, but
even like, I don't know, if you choose the right shots and shit, like, and also the director has a say in the edit, so it's not like, I don't know. It's just kind of like there are parts of it that he can't fuck up, like the Vin Diesel speeches. Yeah. Like you can't fuck that up. That's gonna be he's incredible in those.
Which like I will say, because he has one specific speech where he's talking to Brian about like beating a man to death and like his dad and like his dad's Dodge Challenger, or is it Charger? I'm pretty sure it's
Challenger. I don't know.
I
should have brought it over here.
Yeah, we
can keep talking.
Actually, yeah. Bring both of them.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's true. And then neither for the next one. But
they don't make. Why? I shouldn't be talking. But.
No, it's fine. But yeah, during that speech, that's like another good example. Dust that thing off. But that's another good example, like Dom's speech there. So much dust in the air now. I guess that's my own fault for saying to do that. But it's one of those things where it finished and I was like, man, that speech was so good. But then I was also like, it's also like a little goofy, but like it's this weird thing where like it is equally goofy and genuine and cool.
It's like the thing I love about these movies is kind of the melodrama of them and like the family aspect and how like kind of sappy they are.
Yeah.
And like also the fact that they can swing so wildly in tone from like massive action set pieces to these like more quiet monologues and things like that.
Yeah.
Which is like, this is kind of a weird thing to say, and I don't think they are like 100. This isn't a 100% like match to what they are, but like it is in a Bollywood sense where it like has these massive swings in tone, where it's like like an anime inspired racing scene here, and then a speech here, and then like a little fun party scene here.
Yeah.
And it's not at all like Bollywood and like how over the top it is, but for Hollywood, it's about as Bollywood as it gets.
I mean, where Fast and Furious has like cars being launched like through the sky doing stuff, Bollywood is like that car would be a man. Like, and he would be going that far because he jumped.
Yeah.
And it's like the same like visual level of wacky, but it's like it's a bit more rooted in reality.
Yeah. Especially this one where there's nothing really that crazy in this movie.
I honestly feel like the first three we're doing, there's not really anything that's like too like so over the top that you're like, okay, that's like blockbuster action movie, whatever. Except maybe in Too Fast, Too Furious,
When
there's
they
like
do the ramp jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the opening race. That's insane.
Oh, I was thinking at the end when they jump onto the boat.
Also that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like aside from like a couple jumps, for the most part, especially knowing like where it'll eventually go, it's like it's pretty contained in the first three.
Yeah. Which is also why I think this franchise is so interesting, because of like how it grew over time into like being what it is. And I'll say now, this like also just with the way that the stars came and went in these first three is like so interesting to me. So Vin Diesel does this first one. It's his first big break as a star. He's in like Saving Private Ryan. He does this like short film called Multifacial, and that's kind of what he gets cast off of. So he does this movie. He kind of does incredible in it, and then he turns down a ton of money to be in number 2, to be in Triple X, also directed by Rob Cohen.
Interesting.
And number 2, we'll get into this a little later, but number 2 was like supposed to be about him in Miami, and then they had to switch it. But like, I don't understand how this franchise lived through that thing. And then
like
also
through Vin not being in it?
Yeah. And then also going to Tokyo Drift where he's not in it as well.
Yeah.
Except for the end.
And then they just toss him in at the end and it's like, wait, we haven't seen this guy.
He was in at the end because they were like, we'll give you $60,000. Or, no, they said, we'll give you $60,000. And then he said, give me the Chronicles of Riddick. And they said, oh, that's nothing. You can have that for free. And we get you in the Fast and Furious? Of course.
Yeah.
Because obviously no one watches the Chronicles of Riddick.
But he was probably like,
well,
my
he
own
wanted
action
that.
franchise.
Well, he was in the first one.
Yeah.
He was in Pitch Black as Riddick, which was, it's like a decent 90s horror movie. Very like, movies from this time are so weird.
Was Chronicles of Riddick just one movie?
There was, I think, Riddick and then Chronicles of Riddick. But the first one was Pitch Black, where he played Riddick.
Oh, yeah.
Which is who was kind of the villain.
And then did he become kind of like an anti-hero?
I watched the first 20 minutes of one of the Riddicks with Hillary, and I did not know what was happening, and I did not like what I was seeing.
I remember seeing a trailer for, I think it was Chronicles of Riddick when it was coming out, and me being like, I'm not sure I've seen anything that's looked so bad.
Yeah.
At the time. Obviously now I've seen worse things.
It doesn't
but
look good.
Yeah.
It does not look good.
We'll do those movies.
But this movie
I'm joking.
was supposed to be more based on that article I mentioned, Racer X, which was set in New York and like about the New York street racing scene.
Yeah.
And it was this movie was originally written to be like in New York and about these guys doing like all this shit in New York. But then David Ayer of Bright and Suicide Squad fame, and also
Classic.
The Beehive, with Jason Statham.
Oh,
that
nice.
classic. That absolutely.
Or isn't it called The Beekeeper?
I don't fucking care. It doesn't matter to me.
I don't blame you.
Came out in the first week of January. Means it's bad.
Yep.
I shouldn't say that without watching it, but like I'm sure it's fine. But like, I don't know. I'll watch it one day.
Yeah.
He came in and he was like, this would be better set in LA because LA has a more vibrant street racing scene than New York, and like
New
more
York
colorful.
would feel like a little bit like claustrophobic, I guess.
Yeah. And New York's like also just in general at the time, it was more gritty, less of a party, where with this, you're like, people are closing down streets in LA and like having parties and shit, and the cars are like lit up and stuff. The guys in New York are like, I've souped up this Honda Civic so fast I can go 150 down through the Lincoln Tunnel.
Yeah.
It's not like I have lights on the bottom and I'm trying to show off.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is more Hollywood, more fancy, whereas New York's more like, I'm just getting the job done. Is that a good New York?
I'm just getting the job done. Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think about them naming the big racing event Race Wars?
Here's the thing about the Race Wars thing. It feels like it's like introduced and then it's like, oh, what is that? And then they like talk about it a little bit, and then like Brian is like invited by Dom to like go to Race Wars to prove himself, to see if he can like join them on their like side job and stuff like this. And it's like, whoa, Race Wars. And then we get there, we see like 2 races, and then they move on. And I'm like, Race Wars was not a big deal. Like,
they talk about Race Wars a lot throughout the franchise, but I don't think it ever really gets, it's just desserts.
Yeah.
Like
What is that? Zumbo's Just Desserts?
Sorry?
It's like a Netflix cooking show about desserts. Zumbo's.
I've never seen that.
I thought you were referencing it. That's why I brought it up.
I've never seen a thing called Zumbo. So,
you seen Dumbo?
Which one? The one with
I've seen
DeVito?
neither, fun fact.
I think I saw the one with the cartoon.
Also, another thing, Olivia was listening to one of the podcasts where I mentioned I hadn't seen, I think it was the Bottoms episode, where I mentioned I hadn't seen 8th grade, and she literally went, what? Turned the podcast off and put on 8th grade, and we watched it. So
Did you like it?
it was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's character development.
Yeah.
Kind of like Brian, how he goes from being a bit of a snooty cop to loose and letting his boys run.
So true.
There's something I need to show you before we record the Too Fast, Too Furious
That's fine.
episode. There's, for a couple of the movies, they made these little like short films between them. And I didn't know about this one until like I started watching this. But they made one between this and the second one, and it's absolutely horrible.
Nice.
It's one of the worst things I've watched.
When you say short film, you mean like 10 minutes?
Like 6.
Oh, okay.
But then they also did one between Fast, or like 4 Fast and Furious, which is 4. The naming structure is incredible in this franchise, which was called Los Bandoleros, which is a little better, but it's also still kind of weak. I'm going to tell you about some alternate castings.
All right.
How about that?
Sure.
Vin Diesel. The big one who was up for the role of Dom Toretto was Timothy Olyphant.
I do like Timothy Olyphant.
I don't think he would fit at all as like the
He'd definitely be different. He's a little less boyish.
And he's a little like, there is something about how like ambiguous Vin Diesel is and this character is, where you just kind of
Oh wait,
like,
you mean, I thought you meant in Paul Walker's character. Okay. Yeah, I think he'd be bad and as
I don't
Dom.
think Timothy Olyphant trying to pass off a character named Dom Toretto would really work.
No.
And like also there is something to the like the ambiguity of Vin Diesel, where you're just kind of like, he can get along with anyone in the entire world. Like it makes sense that he goes to these places and people already know who he is and already like him.
Yeah.
Whereas with Timothy Olyphant, you're kind of like, okay, you just got 2 Paul Walkers. Like, what is the thing here?
Well, and there's a, like throughout this movie and the next movie, like people, whenever they see Paul Walker, their instinct is to chirp him and harass him and like make fun of his hair and like his eyes. And like, but when everybody sees Dom, they either are like, they respect him, like him, or they're scared of him.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just kind of natural with like what his presence brings. I think part of it is just like, we've talked about how smooth he is.
Yeah.
But also
like physically or
physically.
Okay, yeah.
But then also like a lot less so in this movie, but like definitely later on, he just kind of has like blank face.
Yeah.
And like kind of a furrowed brow at all times, where it's like he kind of has an intimidating presence by default. I do think in this movie he's like quite expressive in comparison to like a lot of his other stuff. And I think he's great in it. But
I think he's incredible.
I think Timothy Olyphant would be a decent Paul or a decent Brian, not a decent Dom at all.
That's the one I was just kind of like, that would have, I don't think this franchise would have continued if it was him. Because then it is literally just Point Break, where you've got two pretty white men trying to figure out their problems and like come together.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like they're at odds. Brian is the pretty boy. Vin is like the tough, intimidating guy. And how do those like personalities mix?
Yeah.
Paul Walker, there were a lot of people who were up for this role, and some of them were like kind of surprising.
The role of Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
And I should say before this, Paul Walker wasn't in a ton of stuff, especially as a star. He was in Pleasantville, he was in Varsity Blues, and also a movie called The Skulls, which the director Rob Cohen made, which kind of he casted Paul Walker off of that. But other people up for the role of Brian were Eminem. Especially in 2001, that's kind of wild.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg,
Yuck.
which is just like, I guess
at the time, but like yuck.
Yeah. And Christian Bale. Christian Bale might have been.
I mean, he would have done a
interesting,
great
but
job, but like I don't think he's a great match.
Yeah, I think the exact same thing. But the movie is kind of like, it makes more sense for the guy playing Brian to be a little more of like a charisma guy than like someone who is like
a cool guy.
Yeah, because Mark Wahlberg is like in very good shape, but Paul Walker is more of like an everyman, and Eminem's kind of a psychopath, and Christian Bale is kind of like probably would have some gravitas that honestly Paul Walker couldn't really bring, you know?
Yeah. I feel like, Christian Bale would be like, because Christian Bale has incredible range, so like he could absolutely play this type of character, but I feel like Paul Walker is so naturally that. So like it just kind of shines through that it doesn't feel like, I think that's actually a lot of it, which I think is why like we'll get into the later movies how this isn't really the case in some of them, but in this movie specifically it doesn't really feel like anyone's acting. It kind of feels like everyone is kind of just like being themselves in the movie, which I think is kind of a part of what makes this franchise succeed. Like the fact that we keep swapping between saying Brian and Dom and like Paul and Vin. Yeah. Like they kind of are their characters. Obviously, like they're not like stunt racing and committing crimes.
Yeah.
But like,
well, a little stunt racing. Sadly.
But oh fuck, I didn't even realize what you were saying. I didn't even realize what you were implying. Yikes.
Should we just end it, or?
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Dun, 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 dun. That's the outro music.
That was actually.
But I understand what you mean, where it's like these people are just like, this is just kind of who they are, especially with like Michelle Rodriguez as well, where you're just kind of like, oh, she's just this person who's like tough and all this. And it works as she like gets older and is able to play that part, but also like change a little bit. Right.
And also, just since we're talking about the cast, I think like on this watch specifically, I like really noticed how good Jordana Brewster is. Yeah, I think she's like a little better in this than you think. Yeah. Like there's a level of like what's the like word for genuine? That would be like genuity.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Genuity?
I don't know. But I took a note. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'm moving on. But like one of the notes that I took while watching the movie was just that I think she's the best actor in the movie.
Really?
Yeah, because like
I think that's a tough argument with Vin, but I see what you're saying.
yeah, I think it's just very easy to say Vin is the best because like
I think he has the best parts.
yes, but like I feel like Jordana Brewster like in the little moments is so like it's a lot of just like what she does with her face where like I can kind of tell exactly what the character is thinking or what the motivations are, and just like very charming, but like I don't know, I was just like she was someone that I noticed this time around specifically. To be honest, Michelle Rodriguez is kind of like
She's kind of in the background.
yeah, she just like is kind of barely there in this one, which I assume changes, but
Oh yeah. It's like kind of surprising how much they're like Michelle Rodriguez is the person, because she is kind of on the same level as like what's his name, Lonnie and Jesse and like all those other guys, but all those other guys don't really come back. The one
Yeah.
guy comes back in Fast 5.
I mean the one guy gets shot up,
Yeah.
which sucks because he was the one that I liked the most.
Yeah, I kind of wish Jesse would come back, and they are just bringing anyone back from the dead these days in the franchise.
That's
but,
true.
Michelle Rodriguez really becomes like a face of the franchise after 7, especially, which, you know, kind of sad for her because the movies go down a little bit, but she does great in them. She's the best part of most of them. Some alternate castings for Jordana Brewster were, and also before this, she was in The Faculty in a movie called The Invisible Circus, but like kind of just The Faculty.
It's one of my favorite movies, The Invisible Circus.
Really? You've seen that one?
No. Couldn't see it.
Liza Dushku, she was in Vampire Diaries. I don't know.
All right.
This is where it starts to get good. Natalie Portman.
Would have been a hit for sure.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Okay.
Jessica Biel.
Okay.
And Kirsten Dunst. I feel like Jessica Biel fits.
Yeah.
I don't know how those other ones fit.
I mean, I feel like Natalie Portman would kill it, but I also feel like she probably wouldn't stick around.
Well, I
for
also
the
think she was
franchise.
like making a Star Wars at this point.
Yeah.
Time, because this is 2001 and Empire's also 2001, 2000.
Empire is 1990
Sorry, what's the one?
or 1990.
What's the one that's dog shit? The dog shit one.
Attack of
really
the Clones.
bad one? No, the one before that. Phantom.
Phantom Menace was 1999.
And then Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones was 2001.
So she's probably making a
Or
Star
no.
Wars.
2004 maybe.
No, I think they did them pretty close together.
Because I'm pretty sure Revenge of the Sith was 2005.
So it makes, I don't know. She's
Anyway,
probably
somewhere in there.
doing something more important than this. I'll
Yeah.
say that. Because, like, what are you going to, she's like a pretty established actress. She was on
Yeah.
Heat by this time.
Whoa.
Also had done a Star Wars. So, like, she's going to take time out of her thing to, like, get paid a little bit
Yeah.
to be in a Fast and Furious movie. A movie called The Fast and the Furious, which they got that title from, like, some old B movie in the 50s. So there
Cool.
is another The Fast and the Furious movie.
That's like a prequel.
I guess, but not canon.
Yeah.
The canon for The Fast and Furious is fucking insane.
Are there like graphic novels and stuff for Fast and Furious? I'm sure
There's
there
like
are.
a 200 episode animated show on Netflix
Of course there is.
called Fast and Furious Spy Wars or Spy Racers or something. There's a video game, and I don't think there are any graphic novels. I think it's just
I just feel like a graphic novel is like right up Fast and Furious's alley. Let me look it up. I guess
Vin
I've
is
literally got a
very
computer right
protective with what they do with the Fast and Furious.
I was going to ask this earlier. At what point did like Vin become like a lead in like deciding what is done with the franchise?
Basically, number 4.
Okay.
Because he left. He didn't want to do 2 because he didn't like the script and didn't feel like he had enough control over what they were going to do. So he's like already starting to be like, I need to control the things I'm in. And then that happened with XXX, Triple X. not pornography. But that happened with Triple X too, where he's like, okay, now I want to have control over what happens with the franchise, this extreme sports sort of spy franchise, which Triple X is fucking wild. The second one stars Ice Cube. It's called Triple X State of the Union.
That's pretty cool. Also, nothing has come up for a graphic novel for Fast and Furious except for a book based on the animated show called Fast and Furious Spy Racers Comictivity.
Yeah, I don't consider that to be canon.
Yeah,
because it's
that's
like
not worth
Dom's
even talking
son
about.
or something, or Brian's son. It's like not really related. It's like it's really just a namesake.
But it's something for the kids. That's my Vin Diesel.
That was actually pretty good.
It's something for the kids. You know.
Yeah. So it's about like 4, where he comes back and he's like, "This is what it is."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay, we bring Justin Lin from Tokyo Drift. We bring these characters back. We try and like make it a bit bigger in scope, so it's like Mexican drug cartels, and then it kind of like ramps up from there." But yeah, this movie, I don't know what I was gonna say.
I'm excited because the fourth one is the one that I know the absolute least about. So I'm excited to eventually get to that.
The fourth one is so weird also. It's like strange. Some other potential names for this movie: Racer X, based on the article. Because they used in the article, they said Racer X to like keep the guy he was interviewing's anonymity. Also Redline, Race Wars, which would have just
bad.
not good, and then Street Wars. But
can you imagine if we were doing a series that was Star Wars versus Race Wars? War of the Wars.
Yeah.
That was a stupid thing to say and not worth it.
One guy likes George Lucas, the other guy likes Charlie Manson. Because of the Race Wars.
Oh.
That's why I think it's a bad name.
Oh, yeah. I didn't really even think about that.
That's why I think it's stupid.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I guess because when watching, I'm just like so in the headspace of like, it's race time. We're racing.
Yeah. I'm just kind of like,
bad.
You couldn't have thought of like Drag War. Maybe Drag Wars is weird too.
Yeah. Like,
but I guess
just like there doesn't have to be wars in it.
Yeah.
Just say it's like
Race Battle.
Race Con.
It's a racers conference. Everyone wear your button ups.
Everybody dress up as your favorite car.
I think the music in this movie is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's fun.
It really
the general
works for its
vibe
time.
of this movie is like, I don't know if they were trying to be like lean into being goofy or if they're like trying to be cool and it kind of comes across as goofy.
I think early 2000s cool is just goofy at this point.
Yeah.
Because of how stupid a lot of it
like,
is.
They do like maybe a very, very short. Are you checking the cams? Yeah. Good call. Very short. It's like a very short opening credit sequence, just like showing like the director and shit like that. And then like they immediately jump into a super loud, kind of ugly CGI, like techno hip hop chrome sequence.
Yeah.
And it's just like, or actually, sorry, I said CGI. I was thinking of one of the other intros. I think the intro to the next one.
Oh, yeah. Too Fast is like kind of crazy.
They like do some weird thing with a hubcap. Yeah. Anyway, but like in this one, it's just like,
sick, though.
They literally started off by being like, and there's like, fucking thing comes up and they're like in a like shipping yard. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like it's immediately jumping into it. But I feel like it kind of sets you off on like, I guess at the time, maybe people were watching and being like, yo, that's so cool. But like now I watch it and I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to take like the general vibe of this movie fully seriously. Cause like we're just goofing around like with some cars and stuff. But like, that's why like, I feel like the focus isn't really like now that I'm watching them, I can see it. But, like, it's very easy from the outside to be, like, making fun of the Fast and Furious being a whole, like, it's all about family thing. But, like, actually watching them, it's like, no, really the cars are kind of just, like...
It's just a
gateway to, like, visit these like themes of family and connection and stuff like that. So like it being goofy, I think lends itself to that. If it was
fully self-serious and like,
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think it might, at least at this point, be self-serious a little bit, but like because of like the type of cool it's trying to be, it's not like if they were just like, it's the Fast and the Furious, and they like did like a really cool like simple like title sequence, and they like move to the next thing, and it's like, then it would be like, okay, it's kind of like you're doing. If they did less, it would be like you're doing too much.
It's kind of like there's this thing with action movies where, and I love these kinds of action movies where it's like, we know it's stupid, but we're not going to act like it's stupid. Yeah. Because then it's like not going to be the thing.
Because then it's a parody, basically.
Yeah. And we're not making a parody. We're making a series, like we're making an action movie, but it's not that serious. And we're going to do some kind of silly stuff. And that's why I like these movies, because it's like, we're not making meta jokes about how stupid everything is until later on. But like,
sure.
We're not joking about how dumb the movie is in the movie. Yeah. But yeah, the movie's kind of dumb.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of nailed the like there's a type of cool when you see something and you're like, that is cool. And then there's the type of cool where it makes you laugh and you're like, that's so cool. And it's like, that is what they nailed. Where like, you're kind of like, it's funny. How, like the type of cool that it is like, it's like goofy and silly and funny, but like that doesn't make it not actually engaging. It doesn't like take you out of it and you go like, oh, this is dumb. It's just, oh, it's a little silly, but like it's still fun, you know?
So let me hit you with some highlights for me.
Sure.
I think the opening bit where Paul goes to the shop and orders the tuna sandwich is pretty endearing. Yeah. And the fact that like everyone knows the tuna's bad or like the sandwich is bad, but he still does it. So she's like, oh, he's kind of into me. Yeah. I think that's kind of a cute little thing. Yeah. Don't love the fight where they start hurling slurs at each other. Yeah. Well, not at each other, but like the one guy does.
I mean, that's just one thing I'll jump in. Vince is like... the third note I took was Vince is so unlikable, it's crazy.
He's just a bad guy. And like, he comes back. He's the one they decided to have come back.
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't get better.
Yeah. Well, he's a little better in Fast 5.
Well, maybe, but doesn't he like kind of double cross them or whatever in that movie?
More or less. Yeah.
But I mean, in this movie, he doesn't get better. He sucks. He sucks throughout the entire time.
But you need a guy who sucks ass. Because also then it shows how the sort of like morals of Paul Walker, that he's going to save this guy who's a certified piece of shit. Yeah. Right? The opening street race, I love that Ja Rule is promised a threesome, and then when he starts losing, he yells Monica because that's her name, and he's like so sad. Yeah. And then he doesn't get his menage a trois. Yeah. The race scenes in general are just kind of electric, like the way they shot them. I think it's so like stupid and silly that they go into the engines and shit.
Yeah, that's one of those things where I'm like, oh, that is so dumb, but like it's fun. Yeah, like
it's kind of like if
I don't even know what to say about it.
We're sitting at a table and we're trying to make an action movie, and we're like, what if we went in the engine as he was racing? And you're like, that's so fucking stupid, but of course.
Yeah. And then what if we like exited out of the exhaust as it's firing up or something? Yeah. That's literally,
The shot just generally of all of them lined up at the race line through the windows, I think is kind of a must-have for a Fast and Furious movie. And I do have like, I've established some pillars of the Fast and Furious franchise later on that we'll get into.
Sure.
I love the first Vin speech after the race where, let me just recite it for you. Paul Walker says, I almost had you. And then he says, you almost had me? You never had me. You never had your car. Granny shifting, not double clutching like you should. You're lucky that 100 shot of NOS didn't blow the welds on the intake. You almost had me? Now, Me and the mad scientist gotta rip apart the block and replace the piston rings you fried. Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning. Was that good?
Yeah.
So, like, that's just incredible. Just the fact that a man has said that in film and also does it with, like, his massive arms outstretched like he's Christ himself.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Yeah, and, like, it's interesting because it feels like Vin has Dom has the upper hand because he won, but then Brian gets out of his car and everyone's like kind of goofing on him for like losing. But him saying like, I almost had you when his car is like
exploded,
steaming, and he like came in last.
Fell out too.
Yeah. It kind of shows you like how it kind of endears you to him a little bit, because it's like and it kind of endears him to Dom, even though Dom kind of like then retakes the upper hand by like giving that speech a little bit. Like you can tell that it kind of endears him to Dom, because Dom's like, man, this kid's got spirit, basically. Where it's like, even in losing, he's like, he really loves the competition and loves like, no pun intended, the drive.
Yeah.
It's about drive. It's about power. We stay hungry. We devour.
Just wait till he gets in them, huh?
Ooh, good
Isn't
bad
that so
goatee.
exciting, though?
What, that we're waiting till he comes?
4 movies, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is going to take this franchise by its throat.
Yeah. I'm excited for Hobbs and Shaw.
Fuck me, dude. I've kind of thought about, like, because I've seen all of these movies many times. I've thought about like where in general I think how the list in general is going to shake out with just these.
Sure.
Where I'm kind of like, okay, there's a couple I think are above. Some Star Wars are definitely above some of these Fast and Furiouses. I think Fast and Furious is kind of a middle of the packer. But once we get late, it's like near bottom tier for some of these movies.
Sure. I mean, it's the same with Star Wars, which we'll get it. I'm kind of, like I've said at the beginning, like going in with kind of no expectations on both franchises and just seeing how they play out. But like knowing that Fast X is coming and knowing your opinion of that, and knowing that like The Rise of Skywalker is coming, like a lot of these movies... Like, it's us coming and being like, these are our favorite franchises.
Yeah.
These are the movies we love the most. Most of them going to be at the bottom, but we still love them. Like, I don't know. I think it's fun, but it's also sad.
I wish Jesse was still alive.
Yeah, I do too.
I think later on, they start kind of bringing people back. He would have been an incredible person to bring back.
I feel like now it's a bit too late to bring him back because it's been 9 movies.
I mean, you never know.
You never know.
Knowing the timeline of Fast and Furious, this could be the last movie.
That's true. Who knows? But like, I like Jesse specifically when it's just the scene with him and Brian at the garage, and Jesse's just like on the computer, and he's like, "Yeah, I might just like fucking put this thing in there. We could give you blah blah blah."
And he's got
just
like a fully scoped out 3D model of the car.
Yeah, and Brian's like, "You should be going to like
MIT
or something." And he's like, "Nah, I've got, what do you call it? The and it's like ADD." And he's like, "Yeah, I've got that."
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know.
And his dad's in prison, and he's trying to like make this fast car for him and his dad to drive. And you're like, fuck. Why does Johnny Tran got to do him like that?
Exactly. Well, I feel like it's just like he's a character who like it's what like Brian sees, where it's like you see the potential in this kid, but like he's kind of been dealt a bad hand. So he's kind of just like doing the best with what he's got. So I think he's a very relatable character and a very endearing character. And then he gets shot up by a silenced Uzi. Not even silenced, I don't think. I think it's just an Uzi.
And as Dom crawls across the lawn.
Insane.
That's fucking sick.
Dude, he is like, I wrote multiple times. I'll just reference one time when they're at Race Wars and Johnny Tran like accuses Dom of like being a narc, basically. And I wrote down, Dom is accused of narking, and he immediately turns into a fucking wild boar.
Dude, he's like a scary guy.
Yeah, because like he's so like calm and like calm demeanor, and then sometimes like with the crawling across the grass, with the beating the shit out of Johnny Tran, and like a couple other moments, like you're just like, this guy could just like go absolutely feral at any moment.
Even at the very start when he breaks up the fight, you kind of see like, oh shit, he's not just like.
Well, yeah, I also wrote that down. It seems like he doesn't give a shit because he's like, what are they fighting out there? And like that's like a Sylvester Stallone. But like, yeah,
that's a late stage Vin.
Yeah, I guess so. But like Dom goes from not giving a shit to giving a lot of a shit really quick, because he's like, Jordana Brewster is, what's the Jordana Brewster's character's name?
Mia.
Mia's like, Dom, can you please go out there and do something? He's like, what? And then it's like, please. And he's like, okay. And then he opens the door to go outside, and then he's like, oh!
And he has like a shotgun too, right?
Yeah. And he's just like freaking out. And I'm like, man, this guy is at a 90% of the time.
And then
he goes to 100 instantly. And I think that's kind of what makes him scary, is because like then when there's scenes like when they catch Brian's like breaking into the garage, where you're like, Dom is calm right now, but like he could snap and just beat Brian's face in like at any
at
point.
the end when he's like, Brian's making the call, and you just see the look on Dom's face.
You see the seething rage just build up, and then he like realizes like
he's helping.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also not the time.
Yeah, not the time to do this.
Johnny Tran. We haven't talked too much about him because he's like a bit of an ancillary character in the movie. Yeah. Like he's an antagonist, but it's not really
he's not like the villain.
Yeah. I think he's one of the better villains in the franchise, even though I guess you would say Charlize Theron when she like takes over kind of as the antagonist. I think he's one of the better ones though.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just kind of like there was this idea that had been talked about with the late Fast and Furiouses, where it's like we gather the villains from the franchise and have them sort of like build a super team of villains.
Whoa.
And then that the family goes against that rather than like
just
Jason
having a new
Momoa,
villain over and over. Yeah.
Jason Momoa doing his weird thing. Which I would have liked, because Johnny Tran doesn't come back after this.
Yeah.
And I think he's just like a pretty effective like presence. He's intimidating, good enough actor.
Yeah.
Like he's got all the pieces to be a villain in this franchise.
He's kind of like whatever generic like intimidating villain until he like, I forget what the guy's name was, but they have like a guy at the garage that they're like trying to get to do something,
and they pump him full of oil like he's an oil Twinkie.
Yeah, they like knock him to the ground and like for a while pump like oil into his mouth, basically waterboard him with oil, and then he tells him to kiss his shoe. Like while he's like covered in oil on the ground, it's like, kiss my shoe. And then he starts to crawl over to kiss his shoe, and then he kicks him in the face before he can. Yeah. And it's like, that's just like 3 levels of like humiliation and torture. And that's when I was like, oh, this is a bad guy.
Yeah.
So then at the point where like his family gets swatted basically, and like, yeah, I kind of don't feel bad for him.
No.
There's like a slight level when his dad slaps him where I'm like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But then I'm like,
well, he's a bad guy.
He's a bad man. So like he deserves his dad to have his dad not like him.
And he kind of works for the movie because it's like, okay, we know who the bad guy is.
Yeah.
So that's out of the way. So then we can like, whenever we come back to him, it's kind of like, okay, he's the bad guy. You don't
Yeah.
need to convince people again that he's the bad guy.
But the real conflict isn't like with him. The real
No.
conflict is Brian's conscience, basically.
So let me kind of give you my pillars of the Fast and Furious.
Sure.
I've got 5 pillars. Okay. The first is Brian and Mia.
Yeah.
I think for a Fast and Furious movie to reach its full potential, I think they have to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's like a sweetness to them, and there's like, they are a bit of like the audience characters where like you can see yourself in Brian and Mia. Whereas like you can't, unless you're like a specific type of guy, I don't think you're going to think like, oh, Vin Diesel is my closest comp here.
Yeah.
Or like maybe Tyrese, maybe Ludacris, but like they also don't really have romantic interests. So like Brian and me are the only ones that have like a love story that is like succinct and sweet and nice that you can root for. The second is family. Just like having a group of people who like each other and get along and like,
will do anything for each other. Yeah.
I think that adds to it because it's like you can root for the whole thing and like having them be intact.
Well, because I always thought that the family thing was something that was like kind of established later in the franchise, which I think like it being like a thing that they talk about as like a core thing is. But even in this movie, like
When they're at the
lead
barbecue.
detective, well, that as well.
Yeah.
But like the lead detective, when like he's like, Brian, it's like Dominic Toretto's the guy doing these robberies. Like we've known this. And I feel like you kind of just don't want that to be true, but it is true. But there's a point where he says like he says something about like found family. Like he says something to Brian about it. And I feel like I kind of,
Oh my God.
sorry. I kind of interpreted that as, I hit my mic. I kind of interpreted that as like he knew that Brian was having a conflict, and he like very clearly is someone who cares about Brian. Like earlier when Brian's like, "Get me a cigarette," and the guy's like, "Okay," and then the lead detective's like, "No, like you quit smoking." He's like, "Yeah, and I'm stressed out. Give me a cigarette." And the guy goes and he's like, "No, don't get him a cigarette. Tell me start talking. Tell me about something." It's like it's clear that he cares about him more than just like being his officer, I guess. Which is why I kind of interpret that bit where he's like, I interpret it as him saying like, I can tell that like you found something here. You need to decide whether like you care more about this job or whether you care more about like what you've found here.
And we learn later on that Brian doesn't really have a family. So like
It makes
he
sense.
is looking for some sort of connection in terms of like people he can trust and like be with. So that being believable, them kind of having some banter between them, and them like the people in the group meaning something to each other is important to these movies.
Yeah.
The third is Dominic Toretto. You obviously need him in the movies for them to like reach their full potential. He's the patriarch. And he does those like cringy speeches, but they are heartfelt and like add a layer of meaning to the whole thing.
It's kind of like when you're at a family gathering and like you're like weird family relative like says something like, "It's great that we're all here," or like does like a family prayer or something, and you're like, this is a little like this is a little goofy,
cringy,
but like the sentiment that is there is really important, and the fact that it's coming from this person specifically, it means a lot.
Especially like when the person is a little quieter, not always like talking. Like if Vince was like trying to do this stuff, you'd be like, okay, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, if Vince was like, "Hey, we're family, we care about each other," I'd be like, "You're just saying this so you can get in Mia's pants," probably.
Yeah,
but
honestly
like,
true.
Dom, I know, is like, when Dom says that he cares about everyone, he means that. And when he like, which is why when he snaps at like the like people in his family, like it has an impact. Like when he freaks out because Brian is the only one who like goes back and saves Dom when like the cops are after them, and everyone else just goes to the, including Dom's girlfriend, including Dom's sister, like everybody just goes back to the safe house, and like he could have very well just been in prison.
Yeah.
But Brian goes back, so like Dom obviously kind of loses it a bit and is like, no one came back for me except him. That's why he's here. But like, except for maybe Vince kind of isn't impacted because he's just kind of a piece of shit and doesn't really respect anybody.
This kid has no respect. That's it. That's all I got.
There you go. Anyway, you can see it moved. To
fourth is grounded action. I think it needs to be believable in a sense as to what they're doing, even if it's like,
even if it's over the top.
Yeah, it can be believable, but they've explained it and it fits within the movie. Where it's like, people make fun of the like going to space thing, but it works within the movie. They don't just drive a car off a ramp and then they end up in the stratosphere. Like, it's not like they've sort of like, they're doing that shit where it's like, okay, in the movie, this is what it's established. Like, it can't be going much farther than this.
I think people make fun of the space thing because leading up to that movie, which one was that?
That's
Fast
9.
Yeah. Leading up to that movie, people were like, dude, these movies just keep getting over the top. What are they going to do next? Go to space? But like, people were talking about that like the next movie was going to be, they're going to be doing like drag races on the moon.
Yeah. Whereas this, it's like okay, stupid. And it's kind of like idiotic, but it's explained and it makes sense within the movie and there's a purpose.
I feel like it's more made fun of because it was like, in a way, confirming what people joked about happening. But it's like, yeah, but we joked about like 9 out of 10 happening, and what actually happened is like a 3 out of 10, like insane scale. Yeah.
So like in these early movies, it's about the adrenaline of or street racing. And like it starts with the train thing being the biggest one, which is every time I watch this movie, it's hilarious that he just fucking eats shit after he gets through the train. Like Vin's car just gets absolutely flipped and destroyed.
Yeah, it's like a psych out where it's like, whoa, we made it. Oh no, he's actually he got hit anyway.
He should probably be dead.
Yeah.
And then it like ramps up a little bit in Too Fast, but they establish like the tone of the action with the opening race where they jump off the bridge. So like, I think by the time they jump the car onto the boat, it's believable, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I feel like jumping a car onto a boat from a ramp, like pulling a safe through the city in Fast 5, like those things are like things that are way over the top and like silly, but like they're over the top. They're not like bursting out of the top, if you know what I mean. Like I guess that would also still be over the top if they burst out of the top. Mean, anyway, but like it's not to the point where it's like, okay, there's not a chance that's happening. It's like that if this happened, it would be nuts. But like I believe that it's happening.
And also with that stuff, like they did shoot the stuff. So there is the thing of like, they did drag the safes through those streets.
Which movie did, I think it's also Fast 9, where like Dom is driving towards a broken bridge and then does a grappling hook and swings across. Like, that's the kind of thing where I'm like, technically I can see how it happened. Yeah. Technically I can be like, that could happen. Yeah. But that's one where I'm like, it's
a little too far.
Yeah, that's like just over the line.
And it really tips with Fate of the Furious into like that kind of stuff. But like, yeah.
Which, funny enough, I'm pretty sure that's also when they started being like, this is the last one, and then doing another one, and then being like, this is actually the last one. Yeah. And they're doing another one, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be a 2-part finale. Might be 3 parts now. Could be 4 parts. So we'll see. We'll see what Vin lets us have.
I remember around Fast 7, them being like, this is the last one. And then they did another one and said it was the last one. And then they did another one. And I remember when Fast X was coming out and you were like, no, but this is the last one. And I was like, Calder, it is not going to be the last one.
Well, it's 2 parts. So we'll see.
No, but it's not. It's more.
The last pillar of Fast and Furious is Justin Lin. I think what he brings to the movies in terms of his action, how he can like choreograph an action scene and make it all make sense, how he like gets pretty decent performances out of people you don't expect to give decent performances. We can talk about that in Tokyo Drift. And his like the fact that he pushes for real stunts instead of doing CGI stuff even later on in the franchise, I think just brings it a level above. And also he's got a sense of humor in like how he shoots things and how actors like give line deliveries where it's like, okay, this is like fun and serious and there's some good action in here and it like hits the right tone. He's got like he's mastered the Fast and Furious tone. I think.
Is he coming back for any, or is he like done?
Because he
doesn't like Vin, basically, right?
Yeah, he was doing Fast X, and then a couple weeks in, he was just kind of like, I can't deal with him. Give me the $20 million you promised if I couldn't deal with Vin. So he got $20 million.
Nice.
So my 5 pillars, just to restate: Brian and Mia, the family being intact, Dom Toretto, grounded action, and Justin Lin.
So like some of those aren't possible anymore. So do you think it's like truly impossible to have like a like really great Fast and Furious movie now?
They gotta prove it to me that they can make a truly great one. Like a 5-star Fast and Furious masterpiece, I think is near impossible to make. And this movie obviously doesn't have all of those things. Justin Lin didn't direct it. It does have the grounded action family and Brian and Mia.
But would you say Fast 5 is that kind of like...
I think Fast 5 is like the thing where it's like, this is the epitome of what this franchise can be.
So the franchise is literally like a bell curve, basically.
It really is, where it kind of like...
It's like... It's okay, and then it goes to dinner.
Yeah,
actually, well, no, because it starts pretty good. So
it's not exactly a bell curve, but you're kind of like the peak is in the middle.
Yeah. Although in a few years, or in like 10 years or so, it'll probably be more like the peak was in the first quarter of the franchise, because there will be 39 of the films.
Yeah. We'll see. I think the floor of a Fast and Furious movie is like a fun vibe.
Yeah.
And like some entertaining. The bad ones, thankfully, for the most part, aren't very long. Like Too Fast, Tokyo Drift aren't super long movies. So it's just like, especially in this first 3, you get a cool little vibe. You see some interesting stuff. You get out and you've had a good time. Any notes?
Yeah, let me just see if there's any worth saying. Some of the outfits are wild. I know they're just like kind of like a sign of the time, but like...
Dude, mesh shirt over tank top? Is that what Vince was wearing?
Yeah. And then like Michelle Rodriguez is wearing those like low, like super thin sunglasses. And like,
the thing I'll never get is the low rise jeans.
Yeah. They kind of made a brief comeback last year, and then I think
trying to make them come back, but I don't understand.
I'm not really interested.
Low rise, you don't need anything to rise low unless it's a pair of Jordans.
The only thing that has a low rise is a no, never mind.
Chode?
I was gonna make a joke about like a little person getting a boner. Like a Warwick Davis boner, but like I don't want to do that to the poor man. Like I honestly kind of wish I didn't say anything.
Was that in your notes?
No.
Okay.
Thank goodness. Oh, so many full body pan up shots of barely clothed women in this movie.
Yeah, that's
it gets a little bit better like as the series goes on, I think.
Sometimes.
I think that's also just a sign of the times as well.
I mean, it's also like, I don't know. Maybe that was a part of the street racing culture.
Well, that's the thing. Right? I feel like it's very much like if you're a guy who's like cares a lot about how cool his car looks, you're probably someone who also kind of objectifies women.
Yeah.
It's I think it's worst in this movie.
Yeah,
Like by far, I think.
I think so.
The next two are like do it a little bit, but not nearly as much. There's a guy playing PlayStation in his car before the race, which I think is funny, and he's playing a racing game.
Are so fucking sick.
They're so cool, and so many subwoofers.
Yeah.
So many people dick riding Dom. Everyone's just like obsessed with Dom.
They ride his meat. They glaze him like he's LeBron.
Yeah. The movie's audio is all over the place. Sometimes it is so loud, and sometimes I can't hear a word anyone's saying.
Yeah. It's sick.
Which is pretty awesome. Oh, this one. This is actual dialogue from the film. This is after...
I'll remember it.
Yeah. This is after Johnny Tran and his gang, like, first, like, approach them and, like, leave and then come back and shoot up the car.
Okay.
So it's Johnny Tran leaves. Brian goes, "So what was that all about?" Dom goes, "It's a long story. I'll tell you later." They come back, shoot up the car, leave. Next line. "So what was that all about?" "It's a long story." Like, it was literally like, "So what's that all about?" "It's a long story. I'll tell you later." And then some no dialogue happens for 10 seconds, and the next lines are the exact same lines from the exact same characters. And I was like, you could probably do a little bit more there.
The characters are consistent.
But that's the kind of thing that's like, that's a directing problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Where it's like he just didn't like realize like, oh, they're going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I do think it's funny when Brian's like, well, we got like a 20-mile walk, so you should probably just tell me.
Yeah.
It's a long story. We got a long walk.
Yeah. Bold to straight up lie to Dom when he directly asks you, like, "Are you a cop? Don't lie to me." But, like, I guess he kind of had to.
Yeah, you kind of have to.
Oh, this was a bad line. Who was it? Oh, yeah, one of the detectives asks Brian, because they're talking about how he, like, is, like, interested in Mia, and then one of them says, "You going native on me, Brian?" And I was like, wow.
Yeah, there's some stuff in this where you're just kind of like, fuck.
Which, like, maybe I'll mention it in the, like, that episode, but also in Tokyo Drift at the beginning when they're, like, at the school and just showing how bad the school is. They show shots of a bunch of jocks hitting a piñata of a Native American person. And I'm like...
But the song that they play over it's pretty sick.
Sure. But that's like another sign of the times thing where it's like, you don't.
Just relax.
Yeah.
Just relax, boys.
None of that, please.
I love Justin Lin, but in Tokyo Drift, there is some stuff where you're just kind of like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
Just...
Which we'll get into, but the Dom monologue about his dad and killing a man is a bit corny, but it's good and a great insight into the character's motivations, for sure. And then I wrote, so basically, if you don't have NOS, you stand no chance in any races.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So, like, why race if you don't have, like, a lot of it? You know? It's just, like, a little silly. Like, every single... It gets, like, it's less so in the other movies, but in this movie specifically, it's like... If you don't have NOS, like, you're losing. Every single winner of every race hits NOS, like, uses NOS.
Yeah. It shows the haves and have-nots, though, you know?
Yeah.
The class dynamics of the street racing world.
Yeah. Which I was wondering, like, when Paul or when Brian wins the race, does he get the entire winnings? Or does he get, like, the biggest percentage? Second place gets a little bit. Third place gets a little bit, you know?
I think it's the entire.
But, like, when... who was it? Or no, that's in the second movie. Mm-hmm. Is it Suki?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, she comes in second in a race, and she's, like, pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
But it's like...
Maybe Luda splits it.
Because I feel like they each dropped in that movie, they dropped $35,000 each, and then Brian won...
I think. 35 grand?
I forget how much. Maybe it was 3,500.
Yeah.
They said 35 large, which I don't know what that means.
Like 100.
Regardless, anyway.
But yeah, I think
or no, it was 3,500, and then Brian won 10,000.
Oh, so then Suki gets like 2,000.
Yeah.
And then Luda probably gets or Suki probably gets like 1,500 and Luda gets like 1,000.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Something like that.
Can't wait for Ludacris.
I know, same. The chase with the truck where like Vince's arm is caught up in the wire. Yeah, that's
fucking sick.
It is intense, and
you can fault this movie for a lot of things. You cannot fault it for the set pieces, especially the opening and the closing tension, ones. Those are incredible, and they fucking did the thing too.
Yeah,
like that's insane. The best part is that they actually did it.
Well, yeah, because I was thinking like, when they were like shooting the harpoon into the chair of the truck and then like jumping onto the truck, I was like, dude, insane that you would even ever volunteer to do that. But I was talking about the character, and then I realized the actual person did it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were like more safety precautions,
and they weren't going like 60, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
Paul Walker's eyes are so fucking blue.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. He's just such like he's like the good-looking guy.
He's the pretty boy.
Yeah.
Like, pretty boy is the perfect.
He's just so, like, if you were making a person and you're like, how do we make this white man as pretty as possible? He has the bluest eyes.
Blonde hair,
like
blue
any
eyes.
ocean. He is, like, perfectly trim, can, like, play with a little bit of stubble, and has, like, some hair that can be kind of messy.
Yeah. Last note, when Dom and Brian are like about to do the quarter mile to the train track or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a shot where it's like of the traffic light and they show it being red, and then they pan down to the green light before it turns green, and you can see the reflection of the two cars like waiting. And then it turns green and you can't see it when it's lit up. But I just really love that shot of being like red, and then you see that they're waiting there, and then it turns green. I just thought that was really good, like, framing. And,
there's some good stuff in the movie, but yeah, there is some good stuff in the movie.
Well, that's the thing. When a shot like that, it makes me go, wow.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the others. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. The only other note I had was that I thought Dom was gonna die by a train.
Yeah. Let me ask you some questions.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite car in this movie?
Oh, in the movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not in general. I know yours is like your favorite car is like a Chevy Malibu.
Honestly, I guess Dom's Dodge Challenger or Dodge Charger. What does it say on this?
No, it doesn't say on that. I think it's a Charger.
Oh, it says Charger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say Dom's Dodge Charger is like, I guess. I feel like there's more better cars introduced
later on. They get a little fancier because they get more money, and like the characters have more money.
Like, I don't love the like it looks cool for the movie, but like for me personally, I'm not really interested in like a bright neon colored car with a bunch of like underglow lights and a bunch of random stickers and shit all over it. Like, yeah, it's just too much for me. But
I think I tend to like Brian's more. But the Dodge Charger is just iconic. And
yeah.
Like in this movie, it's the coolest car, I think.
I do kind of like Brian's like red truck.
The red truck is kind of
nice. I just think it's kind of cool.
And he drives that thing.
He drives that
like
thing around.
When he pulls up to the auto parts place and he stops it and it tilts forward into the curb. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
It's kind of sick. Favorite character?
In this one?
You could, like, yeah. You don't have to give the general ones if it's, like, Dom or Brian, unless you, like, really believe that. But I feel like Jesse for this movie
Jesse's
is, like...
the kind of the standout as far as, like, side characters
I think
go.
Mia also is great in this movie.
Yeah, those are probably the two I'd say.
And then I'll throw a little bit of love to Johnny Tran, because I think he does pretty good.
What do you think of Johnny Tran's, like, right-hand man? Who's just kind of like, you can tell he's like a little more unhinged.
Yeah.
But like he doesn't have like the...
I think he does the thing where he's like, I'm just a little crazier than him. Pretty well, but in general, it's kind of like...
He's just like,
he doesn't
whatever.
really do anything. He just shoots people or just wants to shoot people at any point at any time.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite aspect of the movie? Was there something where you were like, that is like cool and I like that is in the movie and made you excited for what is to come?
I mean, I think just like the Dom Brian relationship and like seeing the trust build and then seeing it kind of crumble at the end when like Dom realizes that Brian was lying the whole time, despite Dom like continually giving him the benefit of the doubt and like trusting him. And then seeing it kind of like come together at the end again. But like, yeah, I guess I guess actually I'd say the tension of like Dom realizing that Brian was lying was like a standout, because you can like just he like literally starts to like seethe. He's so angry, but then he like has to push it down. And then I guess like the mutual respect at the end.
It's like the Dom Brian relationship.
Yeah, which like I probably won't say that for the other movies because that'll just be like in all of them. But like in this movie specifically, I guess because this is where it's most complex.
I think in general, also the character dynamics are pretty believable between like how they bounce off each other, how like Vince and Dom and Brian react, and how Dom reacts to Brian dating Mia and like all that stuff. I think works pretty well.
Yeah.
So I like that aspect. Do you want to race for pink slips?
No. Every time that someone's like, I only race for pink slips, I'm like, why would you? I would never do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's too much to lose.
Yeah.
Because like, especially since a lot of these cars, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm racing for 10 grand. It's like, I'm racing for a car that this person has put like 90 grand into.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that like people will be like, yeah, we're racing for like 5,000. And then it'll be like, what about your car? And they're like, okay. And it's like, no, dude, it's like so much worse.
Like in 2, when he's like, I'll only race if it's $3,500. And they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But then also if he was just like, we'll race for slips, they're like, yeah, they'd probably just say yes.
Yeah. I can always get another car. And it's like, no, you can't.
One thing that I thought was just wild was the cell phone number that Brian, or Dom's cell phone number or whatever. 323-555-6439. That doesn't seem like a real, like, it's not really a real cell phone number, but like,
well, it's not any 555. It doesn't exist.
I know, but like a cell phone number starting with 323.
Yeah,
Are
that's
you
a weird
kidding
one.
me? That's scumbag material.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably just because like cell phone numbers are kind of based on service provider and area.
Yeah, but like that's scumbag material.
I'm sure there's plenty of 323 numbers.
Yeah,
maybe there's not.
I just feel like somehow 416-647 is.
Can I be honest? When she was saying the number, I kind of just like my brain turned off because I was like, and now she's saying a phone number.
Well, you actually don't have the math brain
to hear a phone number.
I don't know what that means, man.
You don't have a math brain.
Where are we gonna put this on the list?
An excellent question.
This is maybe the most nervous I've ever been.
What are your thoughts on this? Because usually I feel like we make the other person say where they would want to put our movies. Do you think we should do that for these as well? Yeah? Okay. Because I'm not holding back when I say my rankings for either of these. Sometimes I'm like, where are we? Like, let me consider, blah, blah, blah.
I think we should say, where would you personally rank it? But then where do you think it should be ranked? Maybe. And then we figure, or you like literally don't hold back and say, I would put it at this.
I think we just say honestly where we would put it. Yeah. And then we kind of just figure it out based on the other person. But this movie, I'd probably put it like,
This is always the scariest part of this. Seeing the little wheels turn in his
I'd
head.
probably put it below John Wick, but I'd put it above like Isle of Dogs, Alita.
So you're saying like 31?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because like I'm looking at the stuff above it, like About Time, Karate Kid, John Wick, Fast 5.
I feel like we should probably take Fast 5 out. But I guess we'll just re-rank it.
We'll re-rank it, yeah. Actually, then we just won't consider Fast 5 when ranking these then.
Yeah.
Which is like, whatever. I'm still considering the other ones.
Yeah.
I just don't, just John Wick specifically. I think John Wick is a better movie than this movie. But I think that this movie has, like, a bit more of an engaging, like, cast of characters than, like, Alita or Kimmy or, like, Police Story.
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually feel like this is, like, kind of along the same area as Police Story. Police Story's action's a little bit better, but, like, I feel like the story of this one's a lot better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd probably say 31 is where I'd put it.
Now, if I
might put it, like, I feel like 31 is reasonable. I might put it, like, 1 or 2 lower, just, like, for personal ranking, but I feel like 31 is a good spot.
Now, if I was to put this on the list, conservatively.
Just be honest about where you'd put it. Fully honest.
I could probably watch this once a week for the rest of my life.
Okay.
That being said, I think if I'm looking at the list, conservatively, if I was looking at the list, I'd probably put it 14.
Really?
In the elf spot.
Wow. I was to be honest, like, I knew obviously you were going to put it higher than me, but I wasn't anticipating that high.
That's higher than you thought?
Then I thought you would put it, yeah.
Really?
Because, like, you're saying that the Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that.
Is better than Iron Giant, Close Encounters, Shiva Baby, Silence, Barbie, Bottoms.
I like it better than Iron Giant.
Do you like it better than Shiva Baby?
I find it a little more watchable for me, where, like, this movie is like, I could just have it constantly running in a room I'm in and then not really get disappointed and always, like, look at it. It's, like, so rewatchable to me.
That's fair.
Where I just find it to be, like, hits the perfect tone that I like.
Okay.
I think Shiva Baby, it may be, some of these movies are better, for sure.
Some of the movies I'm putting this above are better than it, for sure. 100%.
They're better made.
Yeah.
But if I'm putting this on a list, it's like one of my most rewatchable movies.
It's a thing of, like, in the past, you've been like, are we doing this list based on, like, what we like, objectively or subjectively? And it's like, it's a balance.
That's my fully subjective.
Yeah.
But then when I bring in, like, objective opinion, it's like, okay, so is it better than Silence? Probably not. Is it better than Marriage Story? Probably not. Is it better than West Side Story? Probably not. But I think it's probably around 25, or the Die Hard Scream area, fair. Where it's like, it is entertaining. It is a fun action movie with, like, some heart in it, and there's good performances. Okay. But I just want it to be known, I would have this movie much higher if it was just like Calder's list.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, because the interesting thing is that around where you say that you would put it if you were being a bit more objective is around the middle ground. Yeah. So now it's debate time.
Suck that down.
Or because, no, I was saying, like...
You were saying, like, 31.
31. You were saying 14.
And then
So, honestly, I feel like the real question is to ask, like, is to compare it to Die Hard.
I think...
Because they're both, like, action movies that are, like, centered around character.
I think I personally would put it above Die Hard just because of, like, my feeling towards it and like how much more fun I have watching this movie with its silliness and, like, the fact that it kind of knows that it's silly. Yeah. Whereas Die Hard feels like it is a fun movie. There's some fun parts, but it's more, like, serious. It's about, like, terrorism. It's like that kind of thing. And I'm just like, and it's just slower. It's a little longer. It's like, it just feels a little less enjoyable to me. But I think it's better made. So I think we probably put it below Die Hard.
You think we should put it below Die Hard?
Yeah. Because Die Hard's a better made movie.
Sure.
Sadly.
But like, here's
Rob
the thing.
Cohen,
I do
get
think
your shit together.
I do think we gotta consider subjective opinion. Because like, I'm thinking about like, I do think Die Hard's a better movie. I think that it's like, as you said, better made. I think it's paced a lot better. It feel a lot.
Wait, what is?
Die Hard's paced a lot better than. That being said, like, I feel like, honestly, like they're around the same level for me. Like I could watch if you were like, do you want to watch Fast and Furious or Die Hard? I'd be like, I don't know, it's up to you. Which obviously you'd choose Fast and Furious then. So like,
of course,
the one that I'm like I'm willing to put it higher. The one that I'm not really willing to put it above is probably like Marriage Story.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to put it higher, I'd be willing to go 24 under Marriage Story. But if you're like, no, we should.
I think below Die Hard is better.
Okay.
Just because, like, I think this movie in several ways is a little poorly made, and like, it's disappointing to say that.
Yeah.
But it's just like, fuck, it could have been so much better.
Yeah.
You know?
Like,
I
honestly think just like, I mean, obviously, like, it's hindsight, like, they wouldn't know to do this, but like, get Justin Lin to direct it, it would probably be incredible.
Like, Justin Lin was like just out of film school, so you're kind of like, fuck, he needed to like be a little older.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like that's reasonable. Put it below Die Hard at 26, above Fast Five. Fast Five will move, so really above Scream.
Yeah.
So the Fast and the Furious at 26.
Be careful, because there is Fast and Furious.
I feel like that's reasonable.
I think that's a good compromise.
And some of these movies will go higher. Some of these movies will go lower.
Well,
believe it or not, they're not all gonna go in the same spot.
We'll see. We'll see.
It
A
could
New
happen.
Hope is gonna go somewhere else. You'll see next week.
Wow.
In the second episode of our Fast and Furious versus Star Wars series.
We should say we've opted to not do Adam Driver recastings for the Fast and Furious or Star Wars movies until we're done all of them. And then we'll recast.
Because me just being like, I'd like him to be Paul Walker's character.
Yeah.
It's just kind of lame. So I think we'll just do that at the end. We'll have a little wrap-up episode. But thank you for listening or watching. We do have video now if you want to watch us. Hopefully the cameras are still recording.
Is it youtube.com/@screenshare?
I have no fucking clue.
Cool. We'll figure that out, though.
Maybe we'll link it somewhere.
Yeah, we can put it in the podcast bio.
Together?
We can put it.
Can we link them together?
We can put the YouTube link in the podcast bio.
That's an interesting one. Thank you, everyone, for listening or watching. Come back next week for our episode on The New Hope, the second episode.
On The New Hope?
You're just not letting me finish this bullshit. On Star Wars Episode 4. What is it? 4?
4.
Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.